I put together eight things that I think folks ought to know about the prohibiting Russian uranium imports ban. Let's dive in. First, number one, why has the government finally banned the imports of Russian uranium? The US still has the largest number of reactors, but we used to also have the world's best nuclear fuel supply chain. Until 1992, there were actually 3 enrichment plants in the US, and now there's only one, which belongs to Urenco. There were 2 conversion plants in the US, and now there's only one. Until last year, it was actually 0 for a while, since 2017. So with the reopening of ConverDyn, we now have 1. Beginning in 1993, just a little background on this, the government made an agreement with Russia whereby Russia would downblend highly enriched uranium from their weapons stockpile and turn it into low enriched uranium in order to run in US reactors. And so the US government paid for this and made an allocation to utilities that was equivalent to about 20,000 pounds a year of U3O8 for utilities as a gift. That opened the door to Russia, and then we've slowly ceded our entire, well, not entire, but most of our supply chain strength anyway to Russia, because they also offered inexpensive one-stop shopping for uranium conversion, enrichment, and custom fuel fabrication services all in one contract. So it was not only less expensive than what you could get in the West, it was actually less complicated. And so that made it attractive. Why just now for the ban? Well, after the invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago, we found ourselves, we being the US, unable to immediately sanction Russian enriched uranium products. I'll refer to those as EUP to make it a little easier, because we no longer had the capacity to immediately absorb such a loss that would bring by doing it right away. And we didn't even have any conversion services, as I mentioned, on US soil, and now we do since the reopening of ConverDyn. So the West barely has the capacity now, but the Department of Energy, along with several legislators from both sides of the aisle, realized that sanctions could actually provide an opportunity to reestablish a viable Western EUP supply chain. And now most of this will be based in Europe at Urenco and Orano, but the DOE absolutely does want to force onshoring and friendshoring to create a viable Western nuclear fuel supply chain. So it could be a little hectic, a little chaotic for a couple of years in this process. But as someone read yesterday, I read where someone said, the DOA does not want to mess with people's contracts. Contracts will be fulfilled. They don't want to do this to people. No, they absolutely do. And that's, I think, probably there was some pressure to, in order to get $2.7 billion in funding for rebuilding our nuclear supply chain, we had to say, okay, we're not going to just, whittle this money away while we are not doing anything different than what we've been doing. Item number 2, okay, this bill, which has passed both houses of Congress, this will become law. So right now we're all awaiting Biden's signature, but that's a formality. Bill 1042 passed the House with nearly unanimous support and then passed the Senate by unanimous consent. So this is a rare show of support. I mean, really rare. And even if it hadn't passed, the Biden administration was threatening to do it themselves with executive action. So why is there a delay on signing? Well, there's not a delay on signing. So that's something I really want people to know. A lot of people have this in their head, like, what's happening? Well, these situations are typically when there's a bill to be signed that's passed, especially that's passed both houses of Congress. These are handled with signing ceremonies whereby several bills are signed into law by the president at the same time, with reporters there to cover it. And also it's a chance to congratulate lawmakers who spent years putting it together, such as in this case, Congresswoman McMorris-Rodgers and Senator Barrasso. And it's a chance for them to get some FaceTime with the president and so forth. And so this is a very routine situation. The only way it doesn't become law at this point is if Biden vetoed it, and he's not going to veto it. That's a guarantee. Item number 3. So what happens after the signature? 90 days after the signature, any legacy contracts that have deliveries due will not be allowed in. So they have to get here in the next 90 days. To quote Professor Quakes this is just from last night, after 90 days, word for word right here, after 90 days, this is a closing of the US border to all incoming shipments of enriched uranium from Russia, period. Now, there's a lot of chatter about the waivers, and waivers chatter about them being possible through the end of 2027. So yes, they do exist on paper. However, I'd like you to start right now to consider them non-existent. So to quote from the actual text of the bill, and this was a late change, and it reads just like this. Section 2, item I, a waiver may be applied for if no alternative viable source of low enriched uranium is available to sustain the continued operation of a nuclear reactor. So in other words, if you want to come to them and ask them, I mean, there's no other set of rules for this. If you want to come to the DOE and ask for a waiver, you've got to be able to prove that nowhere on the planet could you find an alternative, and that you're going to actually go out of business if you don't, you're going to have to shut down the reactor if you don't get a waiver from them. So waivers are going to be extremely difficult to get, basically consider them non-existent. There was a meeting where the bill passed where the DOE was going over the waiver situation. And of course, I wasn't in the room. I'm getting this from Justin Yoon, who's now made it first available to members, but now it's available publicly from him. He had contacts in the room who said that this was kind of a surprise, definitely a surprise to the utilities in the room, that the lack of ability to get a waiver was going to be this harsh. There were some angry people, but this is about them forcing us forward into the supply chain. And also another item that came up anecdotally through that was that price is not a consideration. You can't come to us and say, yeah, maybe we could get it. It would be running a little late and it's going to be super high costly. No, that's not a viable excuse. So waivers, don't even think about them. Item number 4, could the Kremlin retaliate to this ban? Yes, of course they could. They could say, forget your silly 90 days notice. We're not shipping anymore over now or ever. Now, in my humble opinion, because getting a waiver is very unlikely, the net effect of a Russian export ban like that would now be immaterial. And that's unless you're expecting a delivery within the next 90 days. And yet, from a public relations standpoint, it would probably attract a huge amount of attention to the sector and get the word out about the shortage even more so than already exists, to get people talking about uranium. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. So I don't want to see anyone suffer, but I don't really think anyone would suffer as a result of that type of retaliation. Item number 5, can the ban be circumvented? Black market moving around of a commodity? Absolutely not. There's no black market for uranium anywhere, and it goes without saying that fuel rods are customized for each reactor. You can't just shuffle them around. All uranium products are highly regulated. They come with a stamp of origin, and there's a shipping supply chain of custody that is monitored by the International Atomic Energy Association. So you can't just get around this ban. Item number 6, will Europe follow suit with their own ban? Well, Europe was originally ahead of us, ahead of the US on this. Last year, the EU was perfectly ready to sanction Russian uranium, and it had what looked like unanimous support except for Hungary. And the 27 member nations get to have a veto. And because they've had a long-standing long-term agreement with Rosneft to build and finance reactors for them, Hungary vetoed the bill, or said that it didn't need to be, couldn't go any further, basically, that they would veto it. I don't recall actually if there was a vote taken, but he being Viktor Orban is dead set against this going forward. And so while that happened, and there's no formal ban in place, the EU, via Euratom, has directed all member nations representing 100 reactors to self-sanction and to wean themselves off Russian uranium. So it's happening across the pond as well. Item number 7, does the West have the capacity to take up the slack at this point? Well, this is not according to me, but according to the Uranium Supply Committee, who studies this matter carefully and has for a long time. Except for HALEU, which is high-assay, low-enriched uranium, um, we do have the capacity. I'd probably throw in the word barely, which they didn't, but at any rate, we can't produce commercial scale high-assay, low-enriched uranium, which is otherwise known as HALEU. And yet it's really important to understand, because some people will go, oh, there it is, there's the out, there's the hedge. Well, HALEU is omitted from this ban, but HALEU is only used in small test reactors anyway. It's not NRC approved for commercial use, and it's not expected to be used soon, but it is expected to eventually be used in some next generation SMR designs, including Bill Gates' TerraPower reactor. So, I think there's probably an opening there for the DOE, probably themselves directly, to obtain HALEU if necessary. And yet that's not something that's, that serves our current commercial fleet or really is used anywhere else around the world. I think China may have one reactor. A significant overfeeding will have to occur now in order to accommodate the loss of Russian LEU. Western enrichers like Urenco and Orano are privately held, so they don't have to say exactly to what extent they've been overfeeding so far. And people who've talked to them at conferences and so forth, they say they've been cagey about it. They'll add a little information or maybe a little disinformation they haven't wanted to say. But suffice it to say that they will now have to increase overfeeding, and that means that they'll be requiring more F6 in order to, as more UF6 is required for enrichment, utilities will be required to order more U308 to be converted to UF6, up to 25% more than has been in the past when there wasn't this, what is expected to be this extent of overfeeding. So conversion will be somewhat of a bottleneck for a while. ConverDyn is a perfect example of why this type of ban can help force a rebuilding of our nuclear fuel supply chain. ConverDyn shut down in 2017 because it had become unprofitable. But even in the years just before that, they downgraded the capacity of the plant by putting in smaller fluorination cells. And this brought the plant's capacity down to 7,500 tons a year. The license capacity is up to 15,000 tons. Since they reopened last year, their parent company, which is Honeywell, big, huge international, multinational defense contractor, has been wary of spending the approximately $200 million needed to upgrade the fluorination cells. And they still haven't spent the money, even though ConverDyn has been sold out in terms of orders for the next 5 years. Why is that? Well, within Honeywell, I mean, ConverDyn is a huge deal to us, right? But within Honeywell, ConverDyn is a tiny division, and they have to allocate cash to whatever will provide their very best ROI opportunities across the whole world. I'm a publicly traded company. There's no sort of, so far anyway, humanitarian reason why they have to make a decision to allocate that funding to ConverDyn. And it's been said that there's some hesitation that they would just end up back in the same place as they were in 2017 eventually, if the market fell, that type of thing, the demand for U308. But those of us that know that this demand is awfully durable now, I think they're probably getting their word through to corporate, and yet just put that situation in the back of your mind for a second. Number 8, what I call the big unlock. Okay, so once this bill is signed, it unlocks major funding for rebuilding the nuclear fuel supply chain. And to quote, on March 8th, 2024, so a month ago, Congress made available to the Department of Energy, two months ago, Department of Energy $2.72 billion to carry out the Nuclear Fuel Security Act by establishing and expanding enrichment and conversion. services to meet the U.S. domestic nuclear fuel requirements while working with our allies and partners. So, end quote. But these funds were contingent upon formally banning Russian EUP, which we've now done. I'm sure the actual unlock will come when the bill is signed into law. But seeing the word conversion in that quote suggests to me that probably whatever's needed, around $200 million of that 2.7 billion, will be allocated to expand ConverDyn back to near its licensed capacity. But as with all things in uranium, even with that money, it will still take about 2 years to complete an upgrade. In summary, is this a very big catalyst? Yes, this is a very big catalyst. Do we need catalysts like this? No. The uranium opportunity is a simple, big supply-demand story. It's a commodity that generates 20% of U.S. electricity, for which there is simply no kind of substitute. There is a 50 million pound per year supply deficit, and that's just now hitting now that all forms of secondary supply have dried up. And new production is years away and won't be enough anyway. Will this ban accelerate the uranium supply shortage story and public awareness of it? Absolutely. This is a wholesale shakeup. After 31 years of having a large portion of the industry, both here in the US and overseas, relying on one vendor, Rosatom, now that vendor is off the table. Finally, as I wrap up, as I always say, become a student of the physical market of uranium, read and listen to everything you can about it, and then you'll fret far less about the volatility in uranium equities, because you'll know where you're at within the cycle. Namely, it's still early innings. Personally, I think the national anthem is still playing.
Wow,
but
that early?
Well, here's why. We haven't even had 1 year of replacement rate contracting yet. And those will be the explosive years once we start getting into those. And we'll have a few to several. And that's when fuel buyers purchase more than they're actually burning up. They're restocking at that point. They're doing this in order to gain certainty of future supply. And what again is that exact metric? It's when we see more than 180 million pounds a year in new contracts being signed in a 1 year period. In 2023, looked like we were on track, but we only reached 160 million pounds for the year. So we haven't yet had one, and that's why we're early. Even though all the wonderful things that have happened that have helped de-risk this trade, that's where I see that we're at. So, questions?
No, I mean, that was a very succinct summary. There you have it, folks. This was the catalyst we've all been waiting for, but didn't really need. And as John puts it, we are still in early innings. As crazy as that may sound, all of this is just icing on the cake.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that said, you guys drop us a comment down below. Let us know whether you agree or disagree with any of these points here. We're happy to get a little back and forth going on in the comment section. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we will see you next video. Bye, y'all.
Thanks.